Hello, hello. So today we are gonna study Chapter 9.
Oh, exciting. What is Chapter 9 about?
In Chapter 9, we have to choose a word which is either grammatically correct or incorrect.
Oh, exciting.
So for grammar lessons, I will speak Korean.
Oh, more exciting.
Exciting it is. Alright then, let's get down to business. Exercise 1.
Very good. And we have a student behind us, too.
Oh, that student though, she's sleeping.
Oh, don't sleep in class. Okay, here we have our wonderful PPT by...
Gamison.
Thank you again. And shall I start reading?
Okay, please.
Multilingual realities arise in a number of ways. Immigrants, whether settlers or invaders, bring languages into contact, and sometimes, as with imperialist and colonial expansion, it is unnecessary for many people to physically move. Their language may make its presence felt through military, religious, or economic force, required relatively small numbers of soldiers, merchants, bureaucrats, and missionaries. Some cultures have had more explicit policies here than have others, but all imperial powers have, directly or indirectly, made their languages attractive and sometimes necessarily to conquer or colonize groups. The languages of expansionist regimes often become intertwined with pragmatic advantage and cultural prestige at a local level, and these factors often long outlive the original dominating influence. The continued adherence to European varieties which exists in formal colonial areas are an example here.
Excellent. So first of all, can you click 3 buttons? Click.
Clickety click.
Okay, so what is the text about?
So the text is about how language gets brought to other cultures by colonial expansion. And today, because colonialism is over, today by immigration.
Okay. So in Korea too, we don't just speak Korean, right? We have many other languages people speak, right?
Sure. So a former colony of Japan, so Japanese is spoken. The influence of America and American soldiers in Korea, so English is used, especially for business.
And Chinese, you know.
And Chinese especially for tourism.
All right, so now time for grammar lesson.
Ooh.
So I will explain. So the first one, requiring or required, right? So in this case, you have to find if there is a subject and verb, right? So 주어 is, subject is their language, and make is the verb, right? 동사. So in this case, ing or pp. But if there is, object, always ing. So requiring의 목적어 있습니다. Small numbers of soldiers, blah, blah, blah. So in this case, ing, right? And B, this one is make their languages attractive and sometimes necessary. That's because, make 오형식 동사입니다. 목적어, 목적보, 병렬 구조 2개. attractive, necessary가 병렬 구조를 이루고 있어서 형용사. 만약 necessary가 되려면 동사를 수식해야 되는데 동사를 수식하지 않습니다. 여기서. So attractive와 necessary 병렬 구조를 이루어서 그들의 언어들을 attractive하고 necessary하게 만든다. 아하. And C, either is or are. In this case, you have to find the subject. So which one is subject? Here, 여기서 subject은 areas가 아닙니다. 여기서 주어는 the continued adherence, right? 그래서 단수기 때문에 is. 자, 이럴 때는 동사의 밑줄이 꺼져 있을 때는 수식어구 가로 쳐버려야 됩니다. 이렇게. 그래서 주어 the continued adherence. 그래서 동사는 is. That's
Fantastic.
it.
Wow.
I speak so fast, huh? Okay,
that was exciting.
I know, eh? All right, then let's move on to exercise 2.
Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. Here's our vocabulary. A graduate student in history has a paper to write on the French Revolution. Her grandfather is a professor of history, and when he did his PhD, it was a lot of work to pull together even 10 citations for a midterm paper. For the student, every paper and book she has ever read on the French Revolution is instantly available in her e-memory. Besides the main text and 4 papers she is using in class, she pulls up another 23 references that she has encountered over the years. She's able to refresh her memory on a few points and use several quotes from the old papers. That would have taken her grandfather a full day at the library, takes her just an hour. Not only is her paper stronger, but her memory of the subject has been reinforced and her big picture understanding is broader.
Okay, so click, click, click. Okay, so what is that story about?
Well, it's about how over time using references for your writing, academic writing, has become easier and better, and you conserve more time. So the example is the grandfather who had to spend a whole day at the library finding all his research. Today, the student has all their research recorded in their computer. Ebook or laptop or everything, and so it's much more convenient.
That's right. Okay, now time for grammar lesson. So here, number 1, where is it? So it, 여기서 end부터 시작합니다. When he did his PhD, it was a lot of work too. 아하. So 이때 it은 가짜주어입니다. do야 진짜주어. There's no problem 해. 문제 없고. Number 2, available 형용사 and instantly 부사. So 부사가 형용사 수식 가능하죠. 자, 즉시 available 이용 가능한. No problem. Okay, number 3, a few. So a few는 셀 수 있는 명사를 꾸며줍니다. 뒤에 s가 있으면 correct a few points. No problem, right? And then number 4. 자, number 4는 that부터. 아하, 여기 library까지가 주어입니다. 그리고 takes가 동사고. 자, 주어가 동사했던 것이 그녀에게는 1시간이 걸린다. 자, 대신 명사절을 이끌려면 완전한 문장이 있는데 불완전합니다. 자, 불완전한 명사절을 이끌려면 what이 와야 되겠죠? 그래서 that을 what으로 이끌면 됩니다. Okay? Okay, so number 4 is incorrect, right? So number 5는 has been reinforced. reinforced 뒤에 목적어 있습니까? 없습니다. 뭐뭇을 강화하다는데 없으니까 수동태로 has been reinforced가 되었다. 그래서 her memory가 강화되었다. Correct, right?
So yeah, what should be number 4? Maybe we would have the word what instead.
What would have taken her grandfather a full day? 자, grandfather에게 하루 종일 걸렸던 것이, 그래서 take A에게 시간이 걸리다라고 해석하면 됩니다. 그녀의 grandfather에게 full day가 걸렸던 것이 library에서 그녀에게 an hour, 1시간이 걸립니다. 그래서 명사절 이끄는 거 동사 take로 가겠습니다. 오케이?
Yes, wow. It's like I've put you on full speed.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right, then let's move on to exercise 3.
Very good.
Okay, wow, long story.
It's a long story, but we can do it.
We can do it.
Here's our vocabulary. There is no question that a large amount of communication among humans is intentional, but much unintentional signaling takes place as well. For example, in many cultures, someone giving a friendly greeting to another person raises his or her eyebrows for a moment. This facial gesture is called eyebrow flashing. Unless we make a conscious effort to think about it, we are not aware of having performed an eyebrow flash. Even the receiver may not be aware of having seen the eyebrow flash, although the fact that it is a very important aspect of the greeting and alters the receiver's interpretation of the words spoken at the time. As Irenaeus Abel Ebesfeld has demonstrated, greetings made without the eyebrow flash are interpreted as less friendly even when the spoken words are identical. People in some cultures do not eyebrow flash, and this can create unintentional difficulties in intercultural communication. There are many other examples of what is called nonverbal communication in humans, most of them which are both signaled and received unintentionally.
So what is the text about? Oh, first of all, click.
Clickety-click.
So what is the text about?
Well, the text is about nonverbal communication. In particular, it references eyebrow flashing.
So what is eyebrow flash?
So when you greet someone, it's the movement of your eyebrows. And apparently in some cultures, it can give signals or information that you are being friendly. And if it's not done, you're not actually being friendly, even if the same words are spoken.
Can you show us, how you make eyebrow flashing?
Hey!
Hello! Like this. So
How
you can
fun.
tell the difference, right? Hello.
Hello!
Hello! More friendly.
That's right. And so there's lots of, they say, facial expressions, but also nonverbal communication. That could be your hand gestures or even a smile that's facial.
All right then. Time for a grammar lesson. So where is the underline? So here, given, giving. So you have to see if there is a 목적어, right? So here we have a 목적어, a friendly greeting, and to somebody. So given은 사형식 동사지만 여기서는 사명식으로 완전하게 왔습니다, 맞죠? 목적어 to 사람에게, friendly한 greeting을 to another person에게 주는 것. So 목적어 있고 완전한 사명식 목적어 있기 때문에 giving is the answer. Okay? And B, what's the difference between despite and although? Despite은 전치사 뒤에 명사가 오고요. although는 접속사 뒤에 조동사입니다. 보니까 명사 나왔고 the fact, and then that부터 이 끝까지는 전체가 factors는 동격 없는 거나 마찬가지야. 버려버리세요. 그러면 다 fact만 남죠? 그러면 전치사인 despite the fact, 사실에도 불구하고는 despite가 옵니다. Okay? Now the last one, which one? Either, them, or which. So 여기 보면은 코마 있고 이미 주어 동사 다 나왔습니다. There are many other examples. 많은 example 있다. 주어 동사 나왔고 또다시 many of them are 하면 또다시 주어 동사가 나옵니다. Oh my goodness. In that case 여기 만약 and가 있으면 and most of them이면 correct합니다. 그래서 이 and와 them을 대신할 수 있는 which 선행사가 example이죠, 맞죠? 그래서 대부분의 example들은 are both signaled and received 이렇게 되겠죠? Okay? Do you understand? them을 쓰고 싶으면 여기 and를 넣어주세요. Okay? That's it. 그래서 and와 them을 대신하는 관계대명사 which. Okay? That's it.
So number 5 is the correct answers. Very good.
Very good. All right, now let's move on to exercise 4.
Here we go. Oh. Humanity's shared evolutionary history means that all human bodies are alike, and so too are all human minds. Dylan Evans calls this the psychological unity of humankind. Not only are the 6 basic emotions universal, they're also instinctual and innate biological responses over which we have little conscious control. This means that we are hardwired to respond to certain stimuli in certain ways. Our brains automatically appraise our experiences as they occur and create emotional responses to correspond with that unconscious appraisal. This means that these emotional responses occur without us having thought about them. Paul Ekman talks about auto-appraisers, the automatic appraisal mechanisms which occur unconsciously in response to visual, auditory, and sensory triggers and create the physiological responses we call emotions. Basically, this means that when confronted by something which we find threatening, humans unconsciously respond in particular physical and emotional ways. The sensations we experience as anger are the physiological preparations the body makes in order to protect it.
My. Click, click, click. So what is the story about?
Well, the story is that we are all similar, not only physically, but also in our mental capacity as humans. And so our emotions and our emotional responses are also the same.
I see. Okay. Thank you. And let's take a look at here. So over which가 맞냐? 이거는 over which냐 아니면 which냐의 문제입니다. 전치사가 틀린 경우는 없죠. So 뒤에 보니까 we have little conscious control. 주어 동사 목적어 완전한 문장이 왔기 때문에 전치사 플러스 관계대명사 와야 됩니다. 오케이? 관계대명사 which가 오려면 뒤에 주어가 없거나 목적어 없거나 불완전한 맞죠? 명사 조류입니다. 자 그래서 이럴 때는 또 한 번 더 확인하기 위해서 we have a little conscious control over responses 이렇게 확인 가능합니다. 맞죠? 그래서 우리는 responses에 대한 거의 conscious한 control이 거의 없다. 이렇게 봐주면 되겠고 okay? So this is correct. Alright? And number 2 is here. So that은 여기서 관계대명사 아닙니다요. 여기서 that은 한정사로 쓰였습니다. 한정사. 자 멀리 있는 것을 가리킬 때 that book, 저 책 해서 가능하죠. 그리고 또한 번 언급한 거 서로 알고 있는 내용을 얘기할 때 that book 가능합니다. 예를 들어서 that book that you mentioned. 너가 언급한 그 책. 그렇죠. 여기서 이미 appraised our experience. 여기 automatically our brains automatically appraise our experiences. Right? 여기서 한번 언급했고 그래서 그 unconscious한 appraise와 correspond 하기 위해서 그래서 그로 쓰인 한정사로 쓰입니다. Correct. Okay? 뒤에 복수하면 대시 아니라 도주가 돼야 되죠. Alright? And 3번에서는 ing냐, pp형이냐. 여기서 보니까 근처에 without 있습니다. 전치사 뒤에는 ing, 그럼 이 was는 뭐냐? 얘 동명사의 의미상의 주어가 쓰여 있습니다. 동명사의 의미상은 왜 쓰냐? 여기 주절의 주어하고 다를 때 주절의 주어는 these emotional responses고 이 heading의 주어는 us니까 의미상의 주어는 us니까 이럴 때는 의미상의 주어 그냥 넣어주면 됩니다. 이렇게. 오케이? 그래서 이게 가까운데 without having thought about them. 그에 대해서 생각하지 않고서 이렇게 correct 합니다. 오케이? Right now, number 4. Where is number 4? Here. So confronted. 자, 이거는 confronted냐, confronting냐를 묻는 질문이겠죠. 뒤에 목적어 있습니까? 없습니까? 없습니다. 그러면 correct 이렇게 봐주면 되고요. 앞에 when인데 왜 pp형을 시작하냐? 이때는 주어와 동사, 비동사가 생략되어서 그렇습니다. 자, 주어는 뒤에 있는 주절에 있는 human 주고 비동사 are가 되겠네요. 그러면 when they are confronted 이런 식으로 생략 가능하고 confronted. 자, 이렇게 간단하게는 뒤에 목적어 있는지 없는지만 확인해 주시면 됩니다. 오케이? And number 5로 가볼까요? number 5는 it. 자, 이게 it의 밑에 대명사의 밑줄 꺼져 있으면 대명사 it이냐, dem이냐를 묻는 거죠. or 또는 제기 대명사인지를 생각해야 됩니다. 두 가지. dem이냐, it이냐, 아니면 제기 대명사 itself냐. 오케이? 그래서 이럴 때는 주어를 차입니다. protect. 이 동사의 주어를 차입니다. 주절에 있는 주어 동사 아닙니다. 주어가 아닙니다. 이 protect. 문맥을 해석을 해봐야 되네요. 여기서는. 그래서 sensation. sensation들은 are the physiological preparation이다. 생략적인 준비다. 어떤 준비냐면 body가 만들어내는 준비. 뭐 하기 위해서 in order to protect it. 자, 누가 protect하냐? body가 body를 protect한다. 그래서 protect의 주어 body고 스스로를 보호하는구나. 그래서 body니까 주어, protect의 주어, 의미상의 주어 body고 그래서 자기 자신, 그 body를 보호하니까 itself가 됩니다. It's a little difficult.
Itself is the correct answer.
Yeah, you gotta change it with the itself.
Very good.
Oh my goodness. That's it.
Good job.
My goodness. Okay, now let's move on to exercise 5.
Dun, 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 dun.
Da-da-da.
Here we go with our vocabulary. At any given time, the experts in a society determine the nature of current understanding. One who understood physics in Aristotle's time applied a different body of principles in a different way from one who understood physics in a Newtonian age, and the breakthroughs were associated with relativity theory and quantum mechanics have brought about further alterations in the contemporary understanding of the physical world. Understanding about the world of people does not evolve in so dramatic a fashion. Sophocles is far closer to Shakespeare than Aristotle does to Galileo. Yet just as the wise elder possesses deeper insights into human nature than does the brighter youngster, knowledge obtained from social and cultural studies has altered our notions of the human individual and of human society. For example, in light of psychoanalytic discoveries, a developed understanding of human behavior involves recognition of unconscious motivation.
Oh my god. So what is the story about? It's a little difficult, eh?
It is, but it's saying that there's a difference between the history of how science or physics in particular, and how our notion of society or social interaction has developed over time. And it's saying that there were great leaps and bounds between scientists and their understanding of knowledge compared to the social understanding of people.
I see. But in science, there is a big, progress, right? Like breakthroughs.
Yes, and I use the expression leaps and bounds. So, big jumps is what that means. But it's more subtle with regards
but not
to
in social studies, right?
That's right, exactly.
Okay. Okay, so here, grammar point. Here A, 여기 시작되는 문장은 차이입니다. 여기서 and 앞에까지 이미 주어 동사가 나왔습니다. 그리고 and 이하부터 또다시 주어 동사가 나오고 있습니다. 주어는 breakthroughs, 동사는 have brought. 관계대명사가 있는 것도 아니고, 그래서 breakthrough 주어고 have brought about이 동사라는 거 확실합니다. 맞죠? 그러면 여기서 A에서 associated냐, what associated냐, oh my goodness, 동사 두 개 쓸 수 없습니다. 한 문장에서. 그래서 바로 associated. 뒤에서 associated with 이하가 뒤에서 breakthrough를 수식하고 있습니다. 오케이? 이미 동사가 나왔기 때문에, 여기 있기 때문에, 꾸며주는 걸로 비평. And then let's move on to B. 자, B는 is냐, does냐. 아하, 지금 비교를 하고 있습니다. 누구랑 비교하죠? 누굽니까, 이거? Sophocles, right? Sophocles는 섹스피어하고 더 가깝다. 누구보다도 아리스토틀과 who is it? Galileo.
Galileo made the
Galileo.
telescope.
That's right. Okay, so A가 섹스피어에 더 가깝다. B, C가 D보다도. 그래서 비교하는 거, 여기 앞에 비동사를 썼기 때문에 똑같이 비동사 써주면 됩니다. 그러면 does는 언제 쓰냐? does는 앞에 일반 동사를 썼으면 does, 주어가 3쌍일 때 does 썼습니다. 여기를 보세요. does 왜 쓰냐? 왜 does를 쓰냐면 여기 possesses, 맞죠? 일반 동사를 썼기 때문에 여기는 does를 사용했습니다. 오케이? So 이렇게 대동사 does, 일반 동사를 쓰면 똑같이 스위치 해서 갈릴레오에 맞춰서 is를 써주면 됩니다. 오케이? is, Alright, now C, let's move on to C. Here. So C, 어라, has, have냐, 이거는 주어를 찾아라는 거죠. 발 앞에 있는 게 절대 주어가 아니죠. 가로 쳐버립니다. 주식어고 obtain부터 studies까지가 knowledge를 수식하고 knowledge 주어 단수니까 has is the answer. Okay?
Fantastic.
That's it. Wow.
It is so fun listening to you. Wow.
All right, now let's move on to exercise
6. Wonderful. Here's our vocabulary. Although the prevalent emotional tone of infant-directed talk is warm and affectionate, parents of older infants vary it to convey important information. For example, a mother's no, uttered with sharply falling intonation, tells the baby that the mother disapproves of something, whereas a cooed yes indicates approval. The same intonational qualities are used by mothers to signal approval and disapproval across languages, from English to Italian to Japanese. That infants use the intonation of their mothers' messages to interpret meaning was clearly established by Anne Fernald in a series of clever experiments. In one, 8-month-old infants were presenting with an attractive toy, and their mothers either said, "Yes, good boy," or "No, don't touch." Half the statements of each type were said in a cooing, encouraging tone of voice, and half were said in a sharp, prohibitive tone. The infants played with the toy more when their mother's tone of voice was encouraging, regardless of what she actually said.
So what is the story about?
Well, it's talking about how the intonation or the way you say something is more important than what you said. So in this story, they use the word cooing or cooed, and that means like a lullaby, like a "hello, little baby," instead of a sharp or disapproving tone of "hello, little baby." So even though you say the same thing, one is friendly, one is not.
Yeah, tone is very important.
And that's the tone or intonation.
I see.
And so they're saying the intonation was far more important in the experiments than the actual words.
I see. Thank you. All right, now time for a grammar lesson. Okay, here, what is number one? Okay, here, so it. 대명사에 밑줄 그어져 있으면 it이냐, them이냐, itself냐. 주어가 표현식이기 때문에 itself가 될 일은 절대 없고 it이냐, them이냐의 문제입니다. 그러면 자, 수식어 해주는 거 이거 뭘 대신하냐면 emotional tone이니까 it. 딴 거 뭐 수식할 거 대신할 거 없습니다. 맞죠? 그래서요, 단수니까 it correct 합니다. No problem, right? And to here, 더 가까이 보니까 이게 tell이네요. tell somebody that 야를 말하다. 누구누구에게 뭐뭐를 말하다는 목적으로 쓰 있습니다. 이게 tell에. baby에게 that 야를 말하다. 뒤에 주어 동사 원자나 문장 나오면서 no problem, right? 명사절을 이끄는 that, tell의 목적입니다. And C는 3번, number 3. So, 주어가 are used by mother에 의해 사용되어졌다. 뭐 하기 위해서? to 뭐뭐 하기 위해서. to signal. signal은 뭐뭐는 나타내다, 표하다. no problem, right? 동사, to 동사 원형 거 전혀 문제 없습니다. Okay, number 4. Let's move on to number 4. 자, present가 동사로 쓰면 뭐뭇을 제시하다. 뒤에 목적이 있습니까? 없습니까? 없습니다. 그럼 바로 presented 이렇게 봐야 되겠죠. 그리고 present는 A를 주다 to B에게 이렇게 되는데 with가 나오면 A에게 주다 with B를 가지고 이렇게 보면 됩니다. 그래서 사랑이 주어로 빠져나갔습니다. 8살짜리 인펀트들이 제시받는다. with ER을 이렇게 봐주면 되겠죠. 다시 한번 present A to B는 A를 주다 to B에게 present somebody 나오고 somebody 뭐 누구누구에게 제시하다 주다 with 뭐뭐를 가지고 이렇게 되겠죠. 그래서 사람이 주어로 빠져나와서 수동태 형태를 취합니다. 좀 더 간단하게 보려면 present 뒤에 목적어 있냐 없냐? 없죠. 없으면 그냥 수동태 이렇게 바로 간단하게 풀어도 됩니다. Alright, then let's move on to number 5. 관계대명사 what은 뒤에 불완전한 문장 she actually said 목적어 없습니다. 그러면서 앞에 선행사까지 없어야 됩니다. 맞죠? 그래서 what correct 합니다.
Very good.
Okay. All right, then let's move on to exercise 7.
Oh, very good.
Ooh.
Okay, and we have our vocabulary. We ready? What employees want is to be stretched beyond their day-to-day tasks. No matter how inexperienced people are, they need to be challenged to grow. Finding small ways to test their skills and expand their experiences helps people grow. In some companies, there are slack time lists that allow people to take on different tasks outside their everyday work when things are slow or they're waiting for direction. These tasks are important, but not urgent. It might be to build on a collection of data or research work. All things that you'd love to accomplish if only you had the time. This way, you can keep your staff productively when there are lulls in the schedule. Anybody can add to the slack time list. It simply needs to be approved by someone in authority to make sure the tasks are worth performing.
So what is the story about?
Well, it's saying that employees need to be challenged. Maybe they get bored quite easily. And often during the day, you might finish one of your duties, and instead of going to your boss to ask to do something more, they've created lists of extra jobs that need to be done. They're not urgent, but it would be good to get them out of the way. And so it shows that the employee is both proactive, like, oh, I'm going to do some extra work, but also it might be interesting to them because it's different from their regular duties. And the whole company gets more productivity.
I see. So keeping the staff or employees productive, right?
That's right. And interested.
Interested. Okay, okay, here, let's take a look at it. How, either how or what. 여기 보니까 뒤에 형용사가 나올 수 있습니다. 형용사로 no matter how inexperienced. 자, how가 이렇게 형용사로 꾸밀 수 있습니다. 맞죠? 이게 의문 형용사, 의문 부사. 의문 부사라서 이게 형용사나 부사 수식할 수 있습니다. 그래서 좀 더 쉽게 생각하려면 no matter how old you are. How old you are. how로 써야지. what no matter what old you are. 틀리죠? 맞죠? 그래서 이게 형용사를 수식할 수 있는 how가 와야 됩니다. No matter how inexperienced people are. 아무리 미숙하다 할지라도 no matter 맞죠? Okay, now number B로 넘어갑시다. Let's move on to B. Okay, here take냐 either take or to take, right? So 여기 보니까 allow가 있습니다. allow 목적어 to 동사 원형의 형태를 취하는 문장 구조. 그래서 to take. Okay, easy this one, right? And C로 갈까요? C로 가니까 keep your step productive인데 자 여기서 만약 productivelly를 하려면 keep을 수식하게 됩니다. 마치 동사를 수식하니까 문맥상 의미가 맞지 않습니다. 그래서 your step를 목적을 목적보하게 유지시킬 수 있다. step가 productive 하니까요. 그래서 목적을 목적보하게 유지시킬 수 있는 keep 오형식 가능합니다. 맞죠? Okay, so that's it.
Very good.
Alright, then let's move on to exercise 8, the last one.
Last one of the chapter. Okay, here we go. Our love affair with shopping began in ancient Rome, the city that became the center of the world's commerce. More than 1 million people lived in Rome by the 3rd century AD. In order to feed this unprecedented population, vast warehouses and markets were needed, such as the fruit and vegetable market at the Forum Holatorium and the cattle market at Forum Boarium. But the Romans were not satisfied with food alone. The specialist shops whose window displays catch our eye on Main Street are in the mall making their first appearance in Rome, where there were shops for books, for precious stones, and furniture. Rome even had the first supermarkets, known as Horia. Many Romans lived in tabernae, consisting of 1 or 2 rooms which opened directly onto the street and which, as well as homes, doubled as shops or workrooms. Indeed, look around the alleys and squares of old Rome today, and you will see that there are still many shops that open onto the street, often without glazing or doors, which are sealed at night using shutters.
My. So what is the story about?
Well, it says that our current way of having downtown markets or shopping centers started in ancient Rome.
Ooh, Rome, yeah. Wow.
And it's because Rome was one of the first cities to have such a big population, and it had many people visiting there, and so it developed into a giant market.
I see.
And what's interesting too is it was so popular that people started making their houses into their shops. So they could just open the door, basically, but a screen, and they were right on the street, ready to sell stuff.
They have a special name for that. What's that called?
Taberna, they said here. Taberna.
Taberna. Have you been to Rome?
I have not been to Italy, and I really want to because I love Italian food.
So someday you can check that out too, right? Okay.
We can.
All right then. Okay, it's time for a grammar lesson. So here, that 관계대명사 that 이게 주어가 없으니까 주격 that 선행사 which고 that no problem, right? Instead of that, you can also use which, right? Can you use which here?
The city which became the center, yes.
No problem, right? So which나 that 가능합니다. 관계대명사 주격. But where? You cannot use where. where는 안 됩니다. city라고 해서 where 쓰면 안 되죠. 왜냐면 where 뒤에는 완전한 문장. 이게 뒤에 주어가 없는 불완전합니다. Right? 그래서 대신나 which 관계대명사 주격. Okay? And then number 2. were needed. 수동태네 목적 없죠. 그러면 수동태 맞습니다. 그리고 동사 수일치도 맞는지 봐줘야겠죠. 주어가 vast warehouses and markets 복수형입니다. 그래서 were 전체적으로 과거형이니까 were needed, no problem, right? Correct. Okay, now see number 3. 이건 좀 어렵습니다, 맞죠? 문장이 좀 길고 많이 깁니다. 그러면서 관계대명사 whose 소위격으로 연결돼가지고 굉장히 복잡한 문제입니다. 자, 이 문장에서 주어는 the specialist shops고 그 다음에 동사가 사실 없습니다. 동사가 이게 그러면 이거 catch는 뭐냐? 이 catch는 이 관계대명사 이 whose에 걸립니다. 그 샵들의 되겠죠? 소위격이니까 그 샵들의 윈도우 디스플레이는 가 주고 catch합니다. our eyes를 on 이하에서 이렇게 되겠죠. 그래서 여기서부터 여기까지 가로를 쳐버립니다. 그러면 specialist shops가 주고 동사가 없습니다. 그래서 얘를 동사로 만들어 주겠네요. 그러면 과거형이니까 made로 바꿔주세요. made their first appearance를 했다. Oof, it's a little difficult, eh? Okay, so now let's move on to number 4. directly에 미스가 이게 뒤에 뭐 수식해주는 directly 형용사는 없지만 opened를 수식하는 부사입니다. 그래서 opened directly 또는 directly, right? 바로 onto 이하로 열린다. Okay, no problem. And what is number 5? And here, look을 시작합니다. 어라 명령문인가 한번 볼까요? Look around the alleys. 한번 쫙 alley랑 squares를 한번 쫙 봐라. 그러면 and you will see. 여러분들은 보게 될 게다. 아 명령문이고 그러면 여러분들은 뭐뭐 하게 된다. 아 명령문 no problem, right? That's it.
Very good.
Okay, now time for chapter 10.
Chapter 10, exercise 1. Here we go.
So in chapter 10, we have to choose the proper word in context, right?
Oh, very good.
All right then. Are you ready to read the text?
I'm ready.
Okay, then here we go.
Social loafing is thought to occur because of a diffusion of responsibility in groups. When group members work together on a single task, and it is difficult to determine who is working hard and who is not, responsibility for the outcome is diffused or shared over the entire group. Whether the outcome is considered a success or a failure, group members share the credit relatively equally. This decreases the incentive for any individual to work hard because there is only a close, loose connection between their individual effort and the outcome for the group. Extra effort may have little or no effect on the outcome for the group and will have absolutely no effect on the credit for the outcome that an individual receives, as long as the individual appears to be trying hard. The result is a kind of free rider problem whereby each individual slacks off a little bit, and in the end, the performance of the entire group suffers.
All right, so what is the text about?
Well, it's about when working in groups, if people try hard or do not try hard based on how they're going to be regarded with their effort.
So even though you don't work hard, you will get the same,
Credit.
points, right? Credit.
Right.
So they don't work hard, So at the end, their performance, suffers, right?
Yeah, because even people who would work hard do not work hard because they see that other people are being lazy, so why try?
Yeah. Okay, so we can find the answer. The first one, which one is correct? Easy or difficult?
So it says, when group members work together on a single task and it is difficult to determine who is working hard and who is not, responsibility for the outcome is diffused. So when you can't tell, so difficult.
Yes, it is. And then what about B? Close connection or loose connection?
So this decreases the incentive for any individual to work hard because there is only a loose connection between their effort and outcome. So loose connection means weak.
I see. So loose, And the last one is improves or suffers. Which
So
one is
suffers. So free rider problem whereby each individual slacks off a little bit lazy, and in the end the performance of the entire group suffers. So hurts. The performance is hurt.
So no one really tries hard,
That's right.
Okay, so that's it. Let's move on to exercise 2.
Very good.
Okay.
Vocabulary, here we go. Animals in the wild see humans as a threat and are usually fearful of human contact. This is an important survival instinct in animals for whom staying away from humans is vital to their survival. In a captive setting where animals are dependent on humans for all their welfare and are exposed all day to hundreds of visitors, fear of humans over a prolonged period may be harmful to the animal's health and mental well-being. Long-term experience of fear may result in poor mental health, manifest in self-harm, conditioned helplessness, or displaced aggression on cage mates. A highly fearful animal will hide, become helpless and depressed, and may even sustain wounds through trying to escape from the contact with humans. Simple daily occurrences such as feeding and cleaning can be enjoyable for both the animal and the keeper.
All right then. So what is the story about?
It's about how animals are not supposed to really be around humans. We're competitors. So in the wild, they fear us and stay away from us. But in a circumstance like a captive setting, they say, so like a zoo,
Yeah.
they have to be around us, but it causes them mental problems. And they might become very aggressive and dangerous to themselves or to humans.
Yeah, okay. So we can find the answers, right? So number 1, vital. Is this correct or incorrect?
Where are we? Vital to their survival. Yes. So vital means very important, and that's correct because staying away from us keeps them healthy.
Yeah, because they're afraid of human, right?
Yeah.
And number 2, prolonged period. Is this correct or incorrect?
So it is correct because when they are around humans for a longer time, prolonged period, it can hurt their health and mental well-being.
And also the next sentence says, long-term experience of fear may result in poor mental health, right? So prolonged period. If they are in the zoo for a long time, it's not good for them, right?
And this is why poor mental health is correct, because poor means bad. Yeah. So number 3 is also correct.
What about number 4?
A highly fearful animal will hide, become helpless. So these are all negative. So fearful is correct.
Yeah, we are talking about fear for animals, right now. And number 5, enjoyable.
So this is incorrect because this prolonged poor mental health contact will eventually result in the animal becoming dangerous to themselves or others.
And also it's bad for the zookeepers, right? They have to be around them.
And they are the others as well, not just their cage mates, but the humans they interact
can be aggressive too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to change enjoyable into what? Stressful, huh?
Yeah, or dangerous.
Dangerous. Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Very good.
All right, then let's move on to exercise 3.
Very good.
Okay.
Let's get our vocabulary.
Okay, then. Here we go.
Needless to say, an artist might clarify her feelings by just focusing on them mentally. That is, it is at least conceivable, controversial, that one could get clear on one's emotional state simply by thinking about it. The emotion, then, would be clarified but not externalized. Yet, could an artwork exist entirely, so to speak, inside someone's head? This would appear to violate our ordinary understanding of art, which regards an artwork as a public affair. It would also seem inconsistent with the notion of expression, which fundamentally rests on the idea of something inside being brought outside. Thus, in order to block cases of completely mental artworks, the expression theorists should add that the process of the clarification and transmission of emotions should be secured by means of lines, shapes, colors, sounds, actions, and/or words. This guarantees that an artwork is, at least in principle, publicly accessible, that it is embodied in some publicly accessible medium.
Okay, so what is the story about?
Well, it is a little confusing, but it's an excerpt from someone talking about how art could be in the artist's mind, but people are arguing that for it to be considered art, it must be publicly accessible. There must be a medium to show the public.
So it should be public affair, it says. Right?
Yes, it needs to be expressed and consumed by an audience to be considered art.
So we gotta say it, right?
Yeah,
To
and
call it art.
that's why we need show the artwork. We have the title here.
Right. So A, either conceivable or controversial, right? So what does conceivable mean, first of all?
Conceivable means possible
Possible.
or apparent.
Imaginable. You
Yes.
can imagine it. Controversial, what does that mean?
Controversial means sort of like a debate or scandal.
Oh, I see. So here, the next sentence starts with a that is, right? So when do you use that is?
Where are you?
The second sentence starts with
that is,
right?
yes.
When do you use
That
it?
is, it means that you're going to explain further.
Yeah, paraphrasing kind of the first
Yes,
sentence,
that's
right?
right.
So needless to say, the artist might clarify her feeling. So it says it is possible to clarify artist's feelings by focusing on them, right? So the answer is, that's why, conceivable, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
That is conceivable.
And then B, we have the word inconsistent. Well, these are opposites. So inconsistent is the answer. So it would also seem inconsistent with the notion of expression. So
Consistent, what does that mean?
consistent means along with, inconsistent means going or diverging, going away from. And so expression means to express yourself or share something, and it would be inconsistent. It would not be logical with sharing something because you're keeping it in your mind.
Yeah. So we usually think, expression means, you have to take out something inside in your head and you have to take it out, right? So that's the expression. So
Yeah.
that's why, if you just express the art only in your head, it would be, inconsistent with the notion of expression.
That's right.
Okay.
And then number C, we have this denies or guarantees that an artwork is, at least in principle, publicly accessible.
So first of all, deny, what does that mean?
Deny means to say no, basically. Yeah, to block,
Wow.
right? Guarantee means 100%.
I see. 100% what?
Something is 100% possible or going to happen.
I see. All right then, which one is correct?
And so it's guarantees. And so this solution makes certain or 100% that an artwork is at least in principle publicly accessible.
Yeah, because with the lines and shapes, you have to express that, right? So we can see that, Okay then.
Very good.
All right then, let's move on to exercise 4.
Here's our vocabulary.
So, are you ready? Here we go then.
The economy of life produces astonishing outcomes. Among these is sting autonomy, the horrible process in which a stinging insect self-eviscerates, leaving its stinger embedded in the target's flesh. This suicidal behavior troubled Charles Darwin as he formulated his theory of natural selection. He pondered how killing oneself could promote passing fitness via descendants to future generations. An insect's self-evisceration could provide strong evidence against his theory. Amazingly, even though Gregor Mendel's genetics, much less the modern concept of DNA, were unknown to Darwin, he came up with essentially the correct answer. By endangering the reproduction of your close relatives, mainly nestmates, your lineage would be passed down via relatives because of your selfless sacrifice. Sting autonomy maximizes the pain and damage of a sting, thereby aiding in the defense of the colony against large predators.
Wow.
So interesting.
Yeah? What is that about?
Well, it's about Darwin and the theory of evolution and how this was a complication. This idea of how, like, for example, bees, if they sting you, it pulls out their stinger and they die.
Yeah, they die, huh?
Right? And so Darwin had this problem. Well, if the idea of evolution is to promote the sharing of your DNA, your genes, killing yourself prevents that.
Yeah.
So how is this possible within evolution? And the idea was that it enabled your relatives to survive.
Yeah, because other, predators will be afraid of you, afraid of, bees, right?
That's right. It'll send the predator away and save your relatives, which means your genetics continues, even though you sacrificed yourself. And we can see this with human mothers who sacrifice themselves for their baby, right? So the baby survives, the mother might not, or the father. Yeah.
But in this case, bees, because, by killing themselves, and also, giving other, predators, stings, right? So the predators will be afraid of them,
Yeah.
So,
And the idea is that insects who sting but keep the stinger and do not die, the sting is less painful.
oh, really?
That's what it's saying. And so it says it maximizes the pain and damage of a sting. And so it's the most damage they can do. So they do it, send the predator away, but they die.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
big sacrifice. Wow.
Wow. Okay.
What a
so-
hero.
So let's check the answer. The number one, suicidal. Is this correct? It is, right?
It is suicidal. Means self, and side means to kill. So suicide, kill yourself. Yes.
Yeah. And number two, promote.
So he pondered how killing oneself could promote passing fitness via descendants. So this is true. How could this promote or explain passing genetics to your descendants?
I see. Okay, number three, against.
An insect's self-evisceration, evisceration means cutting or killing itself, could provide strong evidence against his theory. That's true.
Natural selection, hey?
Yeah.
That's theory.
How do you pass down your genes if you're dying?
Yeah, so against his theory, that's
Yeah.
correct, eh?
He had a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why he pondered, Okay, number four,
Endangering. So by endangering the reproduction of your close relatives. But this was not endangering. This was helping.
yeah, helping.
Right?
And facilitating.
Exactly. So your relatives continued. It did not endanger. It saved them. It was the opposite.
I see. So number four is wrong, eh?
That's right.
And number five, maximizing.
So yeah, so we explained before that by sending the whole stinger and leaving it in, it would make the most damage. And even though it killed you, it scared the predators away.
Yeah.
Because
the predator.
I don't want to get stung.
So, good, eh? All right, then, that's it. Let's move on to exercise 5.
Dun, 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 dun.
Right, here we go. Wow, what
What's
a
a-
long story.
Oh, it's a long one.
Oh, my.
Are we ready? What is the profile of our emotional life as we age? Despite the image of older people as cranky or resentful of the young, Laura Carstensen, a researcher of aging at Stanford University, shows that our daily emotional experience is actually enhanced, decreased with age. Typically, older people experience more positive emotions than negative ones in daily life. The experience isn't purely happy. Rather, our emotions grow richer and more complex over time. We experience more separation co-occurrence of positive and negative emotions, such as those poignant occasions when you get a tear in the eye at the same time you feel joy, or feeling pride at the same time you feel anger. A capacity we call emotional complexity. These mixed emotional states help us to avoid the dramatic ups and downs that younger people have, and they also help us exercise more control over what we feel. Mixed emotions are harder to manage than purely positive or purely negative emotions. Thus, emotionally speaking, life just feels better. Better control over emotions and increased complexity means more enriched daily experiences. People with more emotional complexity also have a longer health span.
So what is the story about?
Well, it's saying that the older you are, the more you're able to control your emotions because you experience mixed emotions. Whereas when you're younger, you experience your emotions very strongly and they're a bit uncontrollable.
So that's why the young people, they have anger issues.
They might have anger issues, or they might be too overwhelmed with joy or sadness, whereas older people tend to, and it says,
Emotional complexity.
but they have happier or more joyful experiences because they are able to mix happiness and joy into other emotions.
Yeah, so they have a mixed emotions, right? So it's easy to control their emotion, kind of. Eh?
Yeah.
Interesting, eh?
And apparently we have better experiences as we get older because we're able to find benefit in all emotions.
I see. I don't think I have an emotional complexity yet.
It will come to you.
Come to me someday. All right, then let's check the answer. A, enhanced, decreased. Which one is correct?
So it says it shows that our daily emotional experience is actually enhanced with age. We get better emotional experience as we get older. So enhanced means increased.
Okay. All right, then B.
B, rather our emotions grow richer and more complex over time. We experienced more co-occurrence. So this is a mix. Co means combined occurrence at the same time.
Because example cases like tears, joy together, and anger, pride at the same time, right?
So
So
yeah,
it's gotta be co-occurrence.
this idea that we're so happy we're crying.
Yeah. Okay. C.
And C, we have easier and harder, and the answer is easier. So they also help us exercise more control over what we feel. Mixed emotions are easier to manage than purely positive or purely negative. We can see this with children. They might have a anger tantrum. They are so angry they flail around, they move around, or so happy they bounce with energy that's just too much for them to control.
I see. All right. So someday, they will have an emotional complexity here.
And be able to control themselves better.
Yeah. Okay. It will come with the age, though, huh?
As we get older.
As we get older. All right, then let's move on to exercise 6.
Oh.
Ooh.
Towns and cities in developing countries are unable to provide housing, infrastructure, and services in pace with their population growth, which is typically much faster than it ever was in Europe. The result is unplanned slums without basic services, where conditions are miserable. This encourages politicians and donor agencies to regard urbanization as negative. But the growth of slums is neither an inevitable consequence of urbanization, nor can it be blamed only on the lack of financial resources. Slums are also the products of failed policies, bad governance, inappropriate legal and regulatory frameworks, unresponsive financial systems, corruption, and not least, a lack of political will. Some governments even compound the problems by limiting access to land and services for low-income migrants. But policies focused on stopping migration or compelling people to leave urban areas, even through massive evictions, are effective. This hounding of the poor has instead made their life even harder.
Wow, huh? So what is the story about? Oh my, slum.
Slums, yeah, so it's a difficult problem. So it's talking about how in countries that have had a problem with poorer populations, areas of cities become very poor and run down and ignored even. And anything they've tried to do to encourage people to even leave has just made their lives harder.
I see. So let's check the answers. Number 1, unplanned. Is this correct?
So yes, we have typically much faster than it ever was in Europe. The result is unplanned slums. You never plan a slum.
Yeah.
So a slum is a poor, rundown area. It's not something you plan to do.
Yeah. And number 2, negative.
So to regard urbanization as negative, not good.
Because of slums and bad things happens, right?
That's right.
And C, products. Products means here like outcomes, eh?
Slums are also the products, the outcome, the result, good, of failed, etc., all these things.
Yeah, it is products, eh? And 4,
Compound the problems, make them worse. Compound means to push them together, right?
I see.
So some governments make the problem worse by limiting access to land and services.
That's not a good solution, right?
Not a good solution, yeah.
Okay. So number 5.
So yes, stopping migration or compelling people to leave urban areas, even through massive evictions, are ineffective. Not a good solution. But they have effective here. Effective means works well. This doesn't work well.
Yes. Okay. So number 5 is wrong, right? So you have to change it into
Ineffective. Ineffective is the negative. I-N.
So what about futile? It says F-U-T-I-L-E.
Futile, yes, it's a great word. Futile means even when tried, it fails.
I see.
It will always fail.
In vain, kind of.
In vain, exactly. Very good.
Exactly. All right, then let's move on to exercise 7. Woohoo. Okay, are you ready?
Here we go.
Here we go.
Is value neutrality possible? Many sociologists believe it is impossible to set aside personal values and retain complete objectivity. They caution readers, rather, to understand that sociological studies may, by necessity, exclude a certain amount of value bias. It does not discredit the results, but allows readers to view them as one form of truth rather than a singular fact. Some sociologists attempt to remain uncritical and as objective as possible when studying cultural institutions. Value neutrality does not mean having no opinions. It means striving to overcome personal biases, particularly subconscious biases, when analyzing data. It means avoiding skewing data in order to match a predetermined outcome that aligns with a particular agenda, such as a political or moral point of view. Investigators are ethically obligated to report results, even when they contradict personal views, predicted outcomes, or widely accepted beliefs.
So what is the story about?
The story is about your personal bias when doing sociological studies. And the idea is that you try to limit the amount of bias you have that you bring to the research.
Okay. Because there's always, it contains a little bit of, a value bias, right? But
That's
they
right.
do try to exclude their bias, eh?
That's right.
So even though they have the result that they didn't expect, they have to report that too, right? They try not to distort, the facts.
Very good.
Okay, then. Let's check A. Which one is correct? Contain, exclude.
So we have contain. So they caution readers, rather, to understand that sociological studies may be, by necessity, contain a certain amount of value bias.
Yes.
No matter how hard you try, you will have some bias in your research because everybody has bias.
Yeah, and also the first sentence says, it is impossible to set aside personal values, right? And retain complete objectivity.
Yeah, so it will contain.
Yeah.
Very good.
And B, which one is correct? Embrace, overcome. What does embrace mean?
Embrace means hug, but to accept.
What about overcome?
Overcome means get over or win a challenge.
Yeah.
So value neutrality does not mean having no opinions. It means striving, trying to overcome, get past personal bias.
I see. All right, so the answer is overcome. What about C? Confirm,
C,
contradict.
So contradict. So investigators are ethically obligated to report results even when they contradict, go against personal views.
What about confirm? What does that mean?
Confirm means it again accepts or says that you are correct.
I see. make sure.
Yeah, so if you have a certain political or personal view and you want a certain outcome, but even if it goes against what you would prefer, you accept it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. Let's move on to the last one, exercise 8. Finally, the last one.
The last one. We've been working hard. You're doing well. One more.
Yeah. Oh, it's a long story.
We
you
can
have to
do
move
it.
a little bit, you know.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Technology does not exist in isolation. It emerges out of specific economic, social, and political contexts. But technological change can make certain things possible or more or less likely. Technology was no threat to newspapers in the 1980s when computer typesetting and direct input revolutionized the industry, transforming the economics in the direction of huge potential increases in profitability. That new technology era allowed for enormous growth in the size of newspapers, pagination, with the resultant potential for shrinking advertising revenues. The current digital revolution, allowing for the delivery of words, pictures, and sound through screens, and a vast, limitless increase in the amount of information available through this medium, is of course a challenge to newspapers, but not necessarily a terminal threat. It is that challenge newspapers are addressing now, in various ways, with varying investment and varying creativity and imagination. There's undoubtedly a lot of gloom to be found in newspaper offices these days, but that is not the whole story. It is also an exciting time for newspapers. Newspapers are not on death row.
So what is the story about?
Well, it's talking about how technology has changed the industry of journalism and newspapers. And so the new technology of newspapers going online has made the industry have to rethink how it operates.
But at first it was good for them, right? And then
Yes, it made everything accessible to many, many more people. But then it meant many, many more people were looking at the industry online and not in hard copy on paper.
yeah. Okay, so let's check the answer. Number 1, change, technological change.
So it emerges of specific economic, social, and political contexts, but technological change can make certain things possible, and this is correct.
And what about number 2?
Revolutionize the industry. So revolution means a rapid change. And so technology was no threat to newspapers in the 1980s when computer typesetting and direct input made a big change in the industry. It transformed the economics, so it was good for the industry.
Thanks to the technology, they made more money back then, eh? In 19...
More audience.
Okay, what about number 3?
Shrinking. The new technology era allowed for enormous growth in the size of newspapers, with the resultant potential for shrinking advertising revenues.
No, it's the opposite, eh?
It's the opposite. They had more potential.
So you can change it into growing?
Potential for growing advertising revenues or increasing or something positive. Yeah.
Okay. What about number 4?
Increase. Allowing for the delivery of words, pictures, and sound through screens and a vast, limitless increase in the amount of information available. It's true.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what about number 5?
Gloom. Gloom means sadness, right? We have the expression doom and gloom, meaning death and sadness. So varying investment and varying creativity and imagination. There is undoubtedly a lot of gloom, sadness to be found in newspaper offices these days.
Because they read a newspaper, online, right? They don't buy it. So
Yeah, fewer and fewer people every year are buying paper newspapers, so they have to transform how they make newspapers now. And so
the gloom means sadness.
it is because a lot of the jobs are being let go. Because the jobs are changing. So the people that actually make newspapers, like the printing process, they don't work anymore.
Okay, that's it.
Wow!
Wow, we did it.
Oh, we woke up Stinky, our student.
Oh.
He went, wow!
Sleeping just like my student.
Wow.
Okay then, that's all for today. So next time we do what? Chapter
11.
11. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So we'll see you in chapter 11. See you soon.
Fantastic. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.